This video presents the hierarchical display of tables relations using DIMS and DB Visualizer for most of the schemas present for AdventureWorks 2016 database. You could see two huge differences if I had to compare alphabetical display in DIMS and hierarchical display in DIMS now. I can see also huge difference in DIMS hierarchical display and DB Visualizer when it comes to the connections between tables. It seems DB Visualizer has additional code, which will create the connections in a way that they will intersect the least with other connections. I asked ChatGPT how this can be achieved, and I was already given code that I could have tried in order to make DIMS and DB Visualizer look as close as possible, but I decided that for the time being they can wait because the initial goal for the visual representation was the compactation of the tables and adding the arrows. While comparing DIMS output with DB Visualizer output, I could see how, in some cases, they change some columns order, where columns are the table names that you see on the canvas at specific horizontal position. I could have tried that too. I could have tried to add more code, which will check those things, but I believe the solution lies into using what ChatGPT provided when asked how to connect those tables while keeping the lines intersection to a minimum. I added also code for not allowing the user to select multiple schemas or tables belonging to multiple schemas because this will affect the way tables and their relations are displayed. If we want to have that functionality, then more code needs to be written, and I believe is not making too much sense for the time being since I don't see it implemented in DB Visualizer 2. I decided to display the input data used to display the tables and the relations as DB Visualizer does not only because it might be useful, but because it helped me during the coding phase to see if I am working with the same right of input data. For the remaining of the video, you will see me changing the position of some tables on the screen in order to reach the location where those tables are in DB Visualizer in order to see the improvement in the connections intersecting to each other. You will see that if I try and move some of the tables in the same position in respect with other tables they have in DB Visualizer, the number of intersections decreases and the display looks more clean. This is why after trying to come with my own implementation of the orthogonal and circular display, I will try to use ChatGPT advices in positioning those tables in a way in which they will create as little intersection points as possible. The main problem would be not the code, because the code provided up to this point by ChatGPT, with some modifications, helped me to reach my goals. The problem is that using that code requires time and tests. Also, the hierarchical display you see in DIMS was created only for the table names, not also for the table names and keys or all columns. When those options are selected, the height and width of each table differs, which means more code needs to be written to track and use those values when creating the tables and the connections and displaying them at specific horizontal and vertical positions. On top of that, I used the code I already had, which means that when implementing the hierarchical view, I looped still through the data table containing all my table names, but on top of that I pulled where they will be positioned based on another data table row index and column index. What I'm trying to say is that in order to use the code I already had, I had to adapt it and not to write new code for this feature. As mentioned in previous post, adding the arrow was done using some code I wrote for PowerPoint control. Since the code written, there was a better choice than the code I had for the arrow and the task control. Changing connections color based on their direction as DB Visualizer can be done, but duplicating how arrows looks and behave to match DB Visualizer will not be possible because this requires a lot of modifications I have in my code. For example, if you look to DB Visualizer, you will see sometimes tables connected by only 2 single lines while sometimes by 3 lines. My connections are always via 3 lines, but if they look like 2 lines is because they overlap. Also, DB Visualizer seems to employ a different starting ending points for the connections than the ones I have implemented, but as I said, I believe these things could be rechecked once the code for fewer intersection will be implemented.